So today I'll read some bits from The Emperor's Handbook by Marcus Aurelius, a new translation of the Meditations, which also happens to be my favorite translation because it's written in vernacular English and therefore a little easier to understand, rolls off the tongue a bit. Book 2, written among the Quadi on the River Gran, Section 1. First thing, every morning, tell yourself, today I am going to meet a busybody, an ingrate, a bully, a liar, a schemer, and a bore. Ignorance of good and evil has made them what they are, but I know that the good is by nature beautiful and the bad ugly. And I know that these wrongdoers are by nature my brothers, not by blood or breeding, but by being similarly endowed with reason and sharing in the divine. None of them can harm me, for none can force me to do wrong against my will, and I cannot be angry with a brother or resent him, for we were born into this world to go work together like the feet, hands, eyelids, and upper and lower rows of teeth. To work against one another is contrary to nature, and what could be more like working against someone than resenting or abandoning him? Section 2. What am I but a little flesh, a little breath, and the thinking part that rules the whole? Forget your books. They aren't any part of you, and as someone who is dying, you should disregard the flesh as well. It is nothing but blood and bones and a network of muscle tissues, nerves, and arteries. Breath? What is that? A puff of wind that is never the same, being sucked in one moment and blown out the next. That leaves the thinking part, the part meant to rule. Now that you are old, it is time you stopped allowing it to be enslaved, jerked about by every selfish whim, grumbling at its present lot one moment and bemoaning the future the next. Part 3. The gods sustain and guide all their works. Not even the vicissitudes of fortune are contrary to nature or to the providential ordering of the universe. It all flows from the gods, who determine what is needed for the welfare of the whole universe, of which you are a part. What is good for each part of nature like yourself is whatever the whole of nature provides and whatever tends to sustain it. Now, it is change that sustains the whole universe, both the simple changes occurring within individual parts, as well as the complex changes occurring among parts in combination. Let these thoughts set your mind at ease and keep them as your guiding principles. Thirst no more for books, so that you will not die mumbling to yourself, but at peace, truly, and with your heart full of thanksgiving to the gods. Section 4. Remember how long you have procrastinated, and how consistently you have failed to put to good use your suspended sentence from the gods. It is about time you realize the nature of the universe, of which you are a part, and of the power that rules it, to which your part owes its existence. Your days are numbered. Use them to throw open the windows of your soul to the sun. If you do not, the sun will soon set, and you with it. Section 5. Every hour be firmly resolved, as becomes a Roman and a man, to accomplish the work at hand with fitting and unaffected dignity, goodwill, freedom, and justice. Banish from your thoughts all other considerations. This is possible if you perform each act as if it were your last, rejecting every frivolous distraction, every denial of the rule of reason, every pretentious gesture, vain show, and whining complaint against the decrees of fate. Do you see what little is required of a man to live a well-tempered and God-fearing life? Obey these precepts, and the gods will ask nothing more. Section 6. Go on abusing yourself, O my soul. Not long, and you will lose the opportunity to show yourself any respect. We have only one life to live, and yours is almost over. Because you have chosen not to respect yourself, you have made your happiness subject to the opinions others have of you. Section 7. Does the news bother you? Do you worry about things out of your control? Then take the time to concentrate your mind in the acquisition of some new and useful knowledge, and stop it from flitting about. By the same token, guard against making the mistake of those who keep themselves so busy trying to gain control that they wear themselves out and lose their sense of direction, having no purpose to guide their actions or even their thoughts. Section 8. Not knowing what other people are thinking is not the cause of much human misery, but failing to understand the workings of one's own mind is bound to lead to unhappiness. Section 9. Be mindful at all times of the following: the nature of the whole universe, the nature of the part that is me, the relation of the one to the other, the one so vast, the other so small. No one can ever prevent me from saying and doing what is in complete conformity with the whole of which I am so small yet integral a part. Section 10. When making a not uncommon comparison between faults of character, the philosopher Theophrastus claims that sins of desire are worse than sins of anger. Whereas the angry man seems to reject reason painfully and with a certain unconscious contraction of the spirit, he who sins out of desire, desperate for pleasure, appears more self-seeking and womanish. It was right and worthy of his philosophy to censor sins undertaken for pleasure more heartily than those accompanied by pain. In general, the one is more like a victim, fired to anger first by the pain of an injustice and then by the pain of his response, while the other deliberately desires what he knows to be wrong in the hope of deriving pleasure from it. Section 11. Act, speak, and think like a man ready to depart this life in the next breath. If there are gods, you have no reason to fear your flight from the land of the living, for they will not let any harm come to you. And if there are no gods, or they are indifferent to the affairs of men, why wish to go on living in a world without them, or without their guidance and care? But in fact, there are gods, and they do care about men, and they have made it possible for men to guard themselves against what is truly evil. Were there any evil which awaits us, they would have given us the means of avoiding it. Besides, how can a man's life be made worse by what does not make him morally worse? Nature cannot possibly have overlooked such an obvious contradiction out of ignorance, or, having been aware of it, failed to protect us from it or to resolve it. Nor can nature have erred so egregiously, through want of power or skill, in allowing so-called goods and evils to rain down indiscriminately on good and bad men in roughly equal measure. The truth is this: since death and life, glory and shame, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all of these happen to the good and bad alike, without making the one worse or the other better. None of these things can be in itself either good or bad. Section 12. How swiftly everything disappears. Bodies in space and the memory of them in time. So it is with anything that touches our senses, especially those that entice us with the promise of pleasure, or terrify us with the threat of pain, or puff us up with pride and self-importance. The mind readily grasps how worthless and contemptible, filthy, fleeting, and moribund these things are. It makes an accurate appraisal of those whose opinions and voices confer fame, and it apprehends what it means to die. Considered by itself, stripped by reason of all the superstitions surrounding it, death is just another work of nature, and only a small child fears works of nature. In fact, death is not just one of nature's works, it is also of essential benefit to her. Observe how man touches the divine, and with what part of his being this contact is made, and how that part is then affected. Part 13. Nothing is more pathetic than feverishly circling the earth and probing into its depths, as Pindar put it, to guess what other people are thinking, while all the time failing to realize that one only needs to attend to the inner spirit and to serve it with unswerving devotion. What is this service? To preserve the spirit from passion, from aimlessness, and from resenting what comes from gods and men. We revere the work of the gods because it is excellent, and we love the work of men because hearts and hands like our own have fashioned it, even if at times this work arouses pity, owing to man's ignorance of good and evil, blindness no less profound than the inability to distinguish black from white. Piece 14. Were you to live 3,000 years, or even 30,000, remember that a man can lose only the life he is living, and he can live no other life than the one he loses. Whether he lives a long time or a short time amounts to the same thing, for the present moment is of equal duration for everyone, and that is all any man possesses. This is why the loss of life seems so momentary. A man cannot lose the past or the future. How can he be robbed of what is not his? Remember, then, these two truths. First, that everything from the beginning is just the same pattern repeating itself, and it makes no difference whether you watch this same show for 100 years, or for 200, or for all eternity. And the second, that the man who dies young loses not a jot more than the man who dies old. A man can only be deprived of the present moment, for this is all he has, and how could a man lose what he doesn't possess? Section 15. Our assumptions determine everything. The problem with these words, attributed to Monimus the cynic, is plain enough, but if we consider them in the context of larger truths, they reveal an important insight. Section 16. A man's soul abuses itself in a number of ways. First and foremost by becoming, as much as it can, a cancerous growth, a foreign body in the universe. Complaining against the nature of things is a revolt against nature, which is made up of all the natures of its many parts. Second, it does violence to itself when it scorns another man, or seeks to do him harm out of anger. Third, it wrongs itself when it yields to pleasure or pain. Fourth, when it wears a mask and speaks or acts falsely or insincerely. Fifth, whenever its actions and efforts have no apparent purpose and cause it to operate at random and without consequence, for even the slightest act should have some end in mind. The end for all rational beings is to obey the reason and law of the one hallowed city and republic. Section 17. What is a man? His life a point in time, his substance a watery fluxion, his perceptions dim, his flesh food for worms, his soul a vortex, his destiny inscrutable, his fame doubtful. In sum, the things of the flesh are a river, the things of the soul all dream and smoke. Life is war and a posting abroad. Posthumous fame ends in oblivion. What then can guide us through this life? Philosophy. Only philosophy. It preserves the inner spirit, keeping it free from blemish and abuse, master of all pleasures and pains, and prevents it from acting without a purpose or with the intention to deceive, ensuring that we lack nothing, whatever others may do or not do. It accepts the accidents of fate as flowing from the same source as we ourselves, and above all it waits for death contentedly, viewing it as nothing more than the natural dispersal of those elements composing every living thing. If the constant transformation of one element into another is in no way dreadful, why should we fear the sudden dispersal and transformation of all our bodily elements? This conforms with nature, and nothing natural is bad. Water? Okay, so for some short commentary. I'll try to be short. All right, so obviously this is stoic as can be, right? And he's the most famous stoic. It's all about controlling yourself, not being angry, being in charge of your own mind, directing where your thoughts go, not rebelling against nature, but accepting nature that is death and doom and ending and forgetfulness and transformation, right? We're not going to be here on this earth very long. He says, we don't control the past. We don't own the past. We don't own the future. Nobody owes us anything. And the things of the flesh are a river. They flow away. They are never the same from day to day. The things in the soul all dream and smoke. They disappear like they were climbing a rope. They go into the sky and they pass us by. We see and hear them no more. We die. Life is war and a posting abroad. I mean, for him, almost literally, he's the Roman emperor who defends the borders. He defends the German tribes. He goes east and fights against the Parthians or the Persians. Time and time again. And he also dealt with plague during his lifetime in the empire. So it's all about dealing with horrid, stressful circumstances. So life is war. Life is not good. There may be moments of happiness, but most of life for him is a struggle, is strife, is dealing with the chaos and trying to make something of it. And of course, posthumous fame ends in oblivion. You die, your name is forgotten, your sons are dead. Your daughters fade into the mists of time. Everything you built returns to dust. It's useless in the end to stand before the march of time and think that if you rhymed or built or battled, you could defeat the ever-flowing laws of nature. But one thing that I find sort of interesting here is, he's saying, death is nature. We have to accept this, and it's about how do you live when you know that your life is going to stop, that all you built is going to disappear, that your name is going to be as nothing. Right? How do you live when you know your memories are going to be gone. The future is not going to be something you can control. The past is going to be something which others remember differently from you. You don't own the past, you don't control it. And it's slowly going to slip away. Your memories are going to grow duller and duller. And I don't remember what happened when I was 5 or 10 or 15. Or, I had that one birthday party, but what age was I? Was I 8, 9, 10, 12? I mean, we were still at the house on that one street, so it must have been before this age. And after we moved from this place, but I don't really know when. Did I have friends at my birthday party when I was that age? We had cowboy hats. Kind of vague, right? It's the same, and in high school and college, I remember bits and pieces, but lots of it slips away. You hold onto a few pebbles, and the rest is washed by the river, made clear and clean. He talks about the promise of pleasure and threat of pain, and pride and self-importance. But all those, the mind readily grasps how worthless and contemptible, filthy, fleeting, and moribund these things are. It makes an accurate appraisal of those whose opinions and voices confer fame, and apprehends what it means to die. So, something interesting there. As a Stoic, it's like, death is going to happen and we're going to accept death. But also, pleasure and happiness, those are going to fade away, so we shouldn't expect them to stay. And we don't want to be devastated by that. So it reads to me as him feeling that we don't want to feel too much, and we don't want to feel too little, right? We don't want to dull ourselves and think, well, life is pain and death and suffering, and I'm never going to get anywhere. At the same time, we don't want to inject ourselves with drugs or go to parties all the time, because this day will soon come when we realize that it's empty. Right? This happiness we gained is now gone, and gained and gone, and every time we get happy, we become a little less happy afterwards. As we think back on the past, which we cannot reach again, and we try to move into the future, which never happens to be what we expect it to be. So we're stuck in a present that just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse, if all we do is accord to pleasure. And, we're going to die. I mentioned that a lot. He's going to mention that a lot. But, people might respond to death by saying, well, I'm not going to die. I'm going to be immortal. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to be fine. I don't want to think about that issue and that problem. I don't want to think about mental decline. I don't want to think about where I'm going to retire. I don't want to think about, all the physical ailments I'm going to have. I don't want to think about what doing this is going to result in 30 years from now, when my body just can't handle this, whatever I'm doing, whether it be something you're eating or drinking or exercising. Like, if you are, like, I'm playing tennis, I messed up my shoulder from playing tennis, and in high school, when I did that, I wasn't thinking, oh gosh, I'm over-exercising and I'm going to get tendonitis and that's going to end up affecting me for the rest of my life. I was just thinking, hey, I want to play tennis. I want to work out with my friends. I want to hit this ball for 4 hours a day, every day, for 2 months, because it's fun. And it ends up hurting you. So, in the same way that death is going to come, you don't know when it's going to get here. The world is full of chance, and you don't want to ignore that. But you don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when it's going to happen. So you're playing the odds the entire time. You're not going too far, not going too little. You're surviving. And so the entire point of Stoicism is to see this view of the world and determine, how do we live in a world like that, which is temporary and fleeting and full of a lot of suffering, if not now, then later. Well, the first thing he accords is be aware, right? Use your thinking mind, not your emotion. Don't let your emotions rule you. Let your brain rule you. Let your brain decide how things turn out. Let your brain decide the actions. Look at things with a clear eye and a clear mind. Is someone angry? Well, why is he angry? Nature has rules and laws and reasons. Everything proceeds from the same source, whatever that source may be, and that everything follows the same pattern. Is someone angry? Someone angry? Someone angry? Are many people angry? Well, why is that? The idea to me seems such that the true essence of a human being is in the mind, is in reason. So if anger as an emotion clouds the reason, then if someone is angry, they are being unreasonable. If I am angry, I'm being unreasonable. So I should calm down. I should focus, take deep breaths, slow down. What am I angry about? Why am I angry? What can I do to fix this anger? I'm not all powerful. I can't snap my fingers and make magic happen, but I can do something and do small steps, bit at a time. And it sucks to do that, right? You want to make one big, grand pronouncement, one huge effort, throwing your entire being into that effort all at once in one day. And it doesn't often work that way, right? You have to do bit by bit, piece by piece, step by step. That's how you get up the mountain. That's how you cross the river. That's how you build a bridge over a ravine you couldn't hope to jump across. And that requires dedication. That requires a mind. That requires looking forward into the future and figuring out the laws of nature, how the world works. As it is with me, so it is with someone else. Is someone else angry at me? Okay, if they're angry at me, why is that? They might not even know. I may not even know why I'm angry, right? I might just be like, I'm pissed off today at so-and-so, at J or K or N or L. And Agent M did something today, and God, it just really got me. So I really don't like him today. The idea is the world isn't random. The world follows laws and rules. So to understand that. So if I'm dealing with someone who is angry, the first step is to find out why he's angry. The second step is to fix that anger by fixing the reason behind the anger, right? You want to draw out the truth here. Now, I don't control other people. I don't control what they do. I can't make them say something. I can't make them realize that they're angry and that that's irrational and therefore dumb and they shouldn't be angry. They should speak rationally. They should speak smartly, and their life will be better because of that. So they should just do sort of what I say and agree with me and stop being angry and talk to me to my face calmly so we can work this out, because we are brothers and we are sisters, and really at the heart of it, we can all work together and pull together and make 1 + 1 = 3. This is not a zero-sum game. We can do it. Just have to speak rationally with each other. We have to comprehend the rules of the world and how to work within them. So one thing that I find sort of interesting is this very last statement in 17. Right? This conforms with nature and nothing natural is bad. Okay, so the idea nothing natural is bad, that makes sense. But at the same time, I want to ask, does that mean that all which is bad is unnatural? That's a greater step, right? That takes a bigger leap that I don't think is really in place here. Even though people often jump to that conclusion, right? They say, well, nature is good, so unnatural things must be bad. And that is not necessarily the case. It might be the case that all natural things are good, and some unnatural things are also good. The key here is in recognizing that the nature of the human being, as far as Marcus is concerned, is a thinking being, a rational being. So how do unnatural things come about? They come about because human beings modify nature and control it, direct it. Well, we are modifying nature, and that itself is our nature. We are thinking beings who learn the laws and then apply the laws of nature, thereby creating batteries and civilizations and books. Marcus does argue, he does say, put down the books. Remember how long you have procrastinated. Your days are numbered. Use them to throw open the windows of your soul to the sun. Because I would say that suggests that the nature of mankind, the nature of humankind, is twofold, right? We are rational beings, but we are also bodily beings with emotions and beliefs, and family and causes and reasons. So that's one of the struggles of the rational mind, right? And if we are completely rational, then what's the point of living? We're just a machine, and there's no joy, there's no sadness. It all ends eventually in silence and nothingness and emptiness and dust, and the sun will grow large enough and overtake the earth, burning everything we've ever built to a crisp. Like, that's going to happen. Human beings will evolve, and in 4 million years, we might be totally different, speaking totally different languages, looking differently. Who knows? The rats will grow and overtake the world, or the raccoons, or something like that. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's probably not going to be, our species as we exist right now being exactly the same in 4 million years or 400,000 years. Something's going to change, be different. Shoot, tomorrow something's going to change and be different. I'm going to read something in the news and go, well, that's over. Yes?
I hear the cat meowing very quietly. Yeah.
Yeah, she's sleeping.
A squeak or something. Something very quietly around.
It might be in the backyard.
Yeah,
There was like a duck or something making noise yesterday. All right, so to return, where was I? Oh yeah, we're all going to die. Okay. But what keeps us going is our emotions. We still feel joy in the midst of a world which will end. We still have cause and reason and purpose. We still feel that goodwill, freedom, and justice is of use, has a purpose, does something greater than just existing. We are living. And we have the famous Stoic viewpoint, this is possible if you perform each act as if it were your last. I act as if I was going to die tomorrow, right? If this was your last day on earth, what would you do? At that inflection point, at the effacement of such an idea, your emotions and your rationality meet and mix, right? You only have one day. It's not immediately. It's not the moment. It's not tomorrow. It's not yesterday. You have time to sort of stop and slow and figure things out, but not so much time you bury your head in a book and read and read and read and never speak and never do. Right? You don't have time to run away. You have to act now with what you have. And partially that last day on earth might be reading a book. I might go dive into the Lord of the Rings again and just read a few of my favorite snippets, read, of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, sing a song or two. But I'm also going to find some of my favorite food. I'm going to talk to some of my good friends. I'm going to write down a few of my thoughts. I'm going to think and consider and direct my emotions. I'm going to focus. I'm not going to think about how I'm going to die tomorrow as if, if today is my last day. I'm going to focus on how do I want to live now in a moment which is extended, which I feel is important here. That it's not, when he talks about, you only possess the present, it is not the present as in a Zenish or Buddhist thought of your momentary existence at this particular moment, half seconds where you simply experience. It's the present as in today, as in this hour, as in your actions that you are undertaking in a short but not infinite time. And at the same time, we only have one life to live and yours is almost over. We only got one life. That's it. And, he talks about the gods and nature and so on, but he's not a Western Christianized thought where he's focused on life and afterlife. Not focused on heaven as the happiest place on earth. He's thinking more of, the fields of Hades, where you're happy, but this isn't the greatest world in the world. You're with your loved ones. There's a garden. This isn't a conception of life where you are only a spirit and totally ecstatic. No, this is a Greek and Roman conception of the afterlife that he would have at this point. If he's considering the afterlife at all, where what you do is resultant upon how you live your life, not resultant upon, some magical forgiveness that happened. It's all about, what do I do? How do I exist? What is the worth of my actions? What is the point of being here? And how do I make that point matter in some way? So lastly, so 14, were you to live 3,000 years or even 30,000, remember that a man can lose only the life he is living, and he can live no other life than the one he loses. I kind of understand that to mean that if your life sucks, you're not really living it. If you may be alive, but if you may be alive for 30,000 years, but if you spend 29,000 of those years locked in a cage somewhere, like Illidan from World of Warcraft, then you aren't really living. That time when you're locked in a cage or insensate or stuck underground, digging in a mine, in chains, enslaved, like a number of characters in books I've read, you are not living, you're just existing, and that's not enough, right? That is not the point. The point is to have action, to have experience, to change the world and follow the laws of nature and live in accordance with them, but also not yourself be overwhelmed by nature, because we the human beings are natural in our own way. We are rationally natural, and so what we do using that rationality is how to best express our nature. I tend to find these interesting because you can hear ideas which later philosophies will take and use. The idea that everything natural is good. The idea that we're all going to die and we have to deal with that. But the way in which Marcus Aurelius deals with them is different and separate, because he's trying to unify all of these points of view into one and uphold them with a faith or a belief in the validity of human power, in the worth of human existence and living. We are a part of nature ourselves and not subordinate to it, is the point he's trying to get here. We are emotional beings, but rationality helps us direct and control that emotion makes our lives better. We are rational beings, but without emotion, rationality is stale and dull, right? It's all about a sort of balance, but a balance which goes somewhere, which is achieving something. We're all going to die, but that doesn't mean we should live in pleasure for the short moments we have. That doesn't mean we should give up. That means that we should work and feel that our life has meaning. We aren't making meaning, I would say, so much as accepting our place without giving up our independence of action and feeling. It's how do you have everything in a world which you do not control? You do the best you can. You achieve what happiness you can get to, and you don't give up. No matter how hard, difficult things get, this is one life, and all of nature works together. There is always a way out. There is always something you can do. He talks about, nature would not have such a cruel effect as to leave us only to suffer, right? There is some almost divine, godly purpose or idea, maybe divine spirit in the world, but not one which is a controlling God, more along the lines of the love of nature, perhaps, the pathways of nature, the expanding powers of nature, which are always on the move and always changing, and that infect or affect or are affected by every square inch of existence. There is no place that is empty of the laws of nature. There's no place the laws of nature do not touch, including ourselves. And because we are natural, there's no place we may not affect. There are no limits to what we may do. There are limits to the rate at which we may achieve them. And even if I fail in my activity today, that does not mean that I have failed in my duty, that I have failed in my purpose, because I have moved the slider, the weight, the counter just a bit. I have shifted the world and changed how things were and are. We're all going to die, but until it happens, we are to continue being alive. Yeah. That's what I said. That's what I would say is what I understand from the Stoic point of view here. At least in chapter 2. I'll go into further chapters from this and maybe become a bit more specific in my reviews, of the advice he gives. But for now, I just want to go over the broad general trends. And thank you.